Welcome to part 2 of the history of Mr. Brown. I'm going to jump right in since there's no need to introduce this. If you're watching this, I would presume you watch part 1. I did a few short films of Mr. Brown. The first one was called Mr. Brown's Christmas Carol, and it was unfinished. I decided to slice the videos together, and that mismatch of video is up on YouTube. Basically, it was Mr. Brown in A Christmas Carol, and he was getting haunted by the ghosts, and it never got finished. It was close, and I probably should have pushed people a little bit harder, but my directing back then was a little bit more fluid, I guess you would say. When I was in college, I did one called Mr. Brown's Vacation, where what was the plot? He lost his wallet, and he had to go on a journey to find it. And he met some characters along the way, some that were puppets. I brought in some of my college friends at the time, and it actually has one of my favorite Mr. Brown moments. And it was one of my friends, I won't name her here, but I don't think she'd really seen any Mr. Browns. And the next thing I knew, I just came out with the voice and the look on her face, and she's trying to cover her face up and she's smiling. If I were to pick a favorite Mr. Brown moment, I think that was it. And it has nothing to really do with Mr. Brown, but just seeing somebody react to him in that way was pretty priceless. And the most recent movie that I did was actually, I wanted to try out a silent film. I like silent films, and I thought, well, I could do one. And I said, well, instead of trying a serious one, let's do one with Mr. Brown. So I actually wrote a script, which, as I explained earlier, most of Mr. Brown is improv, but given that it was going to be silent and I wasn't going to be speaking, I figured I would want a little bit more of a kind of a outline of what I was going to be doing. So I did that, and I brought my brother in, my youngest brother, and he helped me film it, and it's a silent black and white film called Silenced. And that was kind of fun, and that's the latest movie. When I get to the end, I'll talk a little bit about the future of Mr. Brown and what I hope to do with a potential, maybe final movie. Sorry. I'll talk a little bit about something I have to talk about with all the characters. It seems like I like music, and I like making music. I don't care if I have a good singing voice, but I talked about with Johnny Thunder and Benny and Martha, all my characters are gonna sing at some point. I don't know what you would call that, musically minded or whatever, but the first time he ever sang was pretty early on, and it was a rap song. He used a sample from an Eminem track as the beat, and I just had him rap, which was absolutely ridiculous about who he was, being Mr. Brown, and it was pretty awful. And I think I even brought in one of his puppets at the time to do like a verse, which that's where I was. Later on, he did an alphabet song, which was actually one of the longest Mr. Browns, because I wrote like a line or 2 lines about every letter, and he did every letter in the alphabet. And the latest ones are, as I talked about a little bit with the Johnny Thunder video, collaborations with Johnny Thunder. He's done, together that I have done what I guess you would call duets with yourself. And I've done Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, Beer for My Horses, and there's one more that'll probably be coming out soon, which is a cover of Here for the Party by Gretchen Wilson. Where do I start with this part? I guess I'll just go ahead and say it. When I was later in college, I started to realize that a lot of my depression, a lot of what I was feeling for a lot of my life was suppression. I mentioned, I think in part 1, that I was stuck in that metaphorical closet, and it turned out that that's kind of where Mr. Brown came from. Not, by the way, it's not where he came from at first. At first I really did just want to create this fun character, but after a while, I mean, I said it before, Mr. Brown was improv, but I kind of look back now and I don't think he was really improv. His views on, like, religion, politics, society, they're my views. Or, okay, they were my views at the time that I've recorded the videos that correspond. But to this day, you know, he is, you know. And it took me a long time to realize that, you know, Mr. Brown he was a character, and he wasn't exactly an alter ego, but he certainly wasn't as much of a character as Benny Brown or Johnny Thunder. And I realized that he was kind of me being me, or say me being the me that I couldn't be, or that I didn't think I could be. You know, he was always brave, and he didn't care what people thought of him. He was a little bit sassy, and he was always, well, out of the closet. He for some reason, I didn't really understand at the time, he was a gay character. It didn't bother me, obviously, but it turns out that he was just me screaming from the inside to literally get out. And the one thing that I would like to say on that note is, I think it's hilarious in a way that, you know, the people that I think I was, when I finally realized who he was, the people that I was the most scared of knowing that about me were people who loved Mr. Brown. There were people that supported Mr. Brown and watched Mr. Brown, and, you know, they really liked him. And I don't know, it's weird, you know what I mean? I think about that now and I go, well, if they liked him, this fictional character, I don't know. I think about it and I kind of think, what's the difference, you know? But the one thing I will say is, and we're going to jump right up that positive note, because as soon as I figured out who he was and what he was, he became more fun to do for me, because I bridged that gap between me and Mr. Brown. So now I understand that what was happening was I was trying to show the world who I was by playing Mr. Brown, and now Mr. Brown is finally able to be his own beast, I guess, his own thing. And to be honest, it's a lot more fun because I can have more fun with him, and I've been able to build the character more and have him be more than just that. And after that happened, at the end of last year was his 10-year anniversary, and I was able to really just have a blast doing 3 anniversary Christmas videos that were just so much fun. And I didn't feel kind of that pressure that I felt back in high school, and I had kind of that following where I was doing him and I felt like I had to do him. I was just flying and I was doing Mr. Brown, and I didn't care what anybody thought of what he had to say because I was having fun doing Mr. Brown. And that's really, I really haven't done much else since then. I did the short silent film, but honestly that's kind of it. I'm really happy that I finally found out who Mr. Brown is, what Mr. Brown was, and I'm able to kind of be me and be Mr. Brown at different times and have it be fun. And in the future, I'm just going to be looking at having fun with that whole concept of Mr. Brown being his own guy, you know. And for the future, this year there will be a Halloween episode, which there has never been a Halloween Mr. Brown episode ever. And I'm really looking forward to being able to show that. And I do have an idea and kind of a script for a a biopic of Mr. Brown, and I think that would be fun. I don't know that he would die at the end of it or anything like that, but I do think that that would be a good way to kind of say goodbye. He's fun. I don't really know what else there would be to do. I mean, again, I've kind of figured him out as a character, and maybe similar to how now I've taken Benny and Martha in a new direction, maybe I need to figure out how to take Mr. Brown in a new direction. For years, I've thought that maybe doing a legitimate show, maybe a legitimate children's show. I mean, could Mr. Brown be clean? Could he really be the star of a children's kind of variety show? I don't know the answer to that, but that's something that I'm totally interested in looking into in the future. And just taking him in new directions. I guess I'll never know if I don't try. The other thing is, I've thought for years people have told me I should be a comic, and get up on stage and tell. I'm never going to do stand-up. I can't even fathom that. But I think that I might potentially be able to do that as characters, and I think Mr. Brown would be one of those characters that I would potentially bring to the stage. So again, these are all ideas for the future of Mr. Brown. Whether any of them come to fruition, I have no idea. But anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed the history of Mr. Brown. There will be a link to my Mr. Brown YouTube playlist down in the description, so you can go back and watch most of Mr. Brown's videos that I've done in the past. And again, I hope you enjoyed it.